Well, folks, welcome back to another episode of Rethink Real Estate. Today, we've got Mr. Rick Warner. Rick has got an interesting story, to say the least. Is that Rick's been through a fair bit of adversity within his life, and he's overcome that adversity. And ultimately, at the age of 20, he was addicted to drugs and found himself homeless, living in a tool shed, and how that he worked his way back out of that through the group that he surrounded himself by. Today, we dive into a little bit around the fact that we are the average of the people that we hang around and how to identify a better group. We talk about coaching. We talk about the reality of accountability and how it is kind of a dirty word within the real estate community. Rick's a very successful real estate agent in the Petaluma area, just about 30 minutes north of the Golden Gate Bridge. Very excited to have a conversation with Rick today, as he ultimately is a real estate coach also that dives into a few individual daily triggers and daily targets that you set yourself. And then also, how do you take some of the failures within your life and within your day and turn them in for opportunities for growth. A great conversation indeed. We talk about podcast episodes and books that he likes to read as well. So some great insights to some really good personal development books also. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Well, Rick, welcome to Rethink Real Estate.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So, Rick, I just wanted to start off by getting a bit of a general synopsis, because you do a lot of things by the sounds of it, real estate obviously being one of the major ones. Talk to us about what your day-to-day looks like, and talk to us about what you've got going on in your life at the moment.
Well, day-to-day is I do run a successful real estate team, small team, just me, one primary production partner, one VA, and a TC and some other support staff, but it's pretty small. And then a good portion of my effort is around our coaching business, where we're actually taking kind of what we learn, the things that we do, our best practice, and spend time creating content and the stuff for our real estate students to help them do what we're doing successfully.
So talk me through about some of the coaching stuff that you do, because obviously we've been connected. We don't have a vast sort of knowledge of each other, but ultimately, doing some research on some things that you've been through, obviously, but also not to mention as well some stuff that you've done in the success element of your business has been one of the attraction points to having you on Rethink Real Estate. I think you're perfectly fit for the audience that we have.
Right.
Is that from a coaching perspective, I've always found that fascinating. What is it that you focus on with the people that you're coaching?
Yeah.
Within, I'm assuming it's mostly the real estate community?
Yep. It's entirely real estate. That's right. Yeah. So basically for me, my real estate, I'm about 20 years in the business, and I've had a few points where I thought, I've really made it. I'm really doing this, only to find out, actually, you suck. And there's still things like, for example, maybe for some of your audience, you were in the business in 2008, 9, 10, which was really difficult for me. I had been licensed for 4 or 5 years at that point. And just long enough to think I really had done something, only to just fall flat on my face and realize, wow, you really do not know how to do lead generation and all the things that go with creating a real business. And so the coaching business is really based on all of the things that I've done to create the successful business that I have, a culmination of all of the coaching that I've had, because I'm just a big proponent of being coached, all the books I've read, but really heavily weighted on the mistakes that I've made. And then the real challenges, especially around accountability. That was probably my number one challenge. Was here I would read a book, or I'd be coached, or I go to a seminar, and I get some really great actionable ideas, and then I would just suck at putting them into play. And so it would go from great idea to really no action, nothing would change, and my business would stay the same. So we tried to create a coaching business that was really more around the collaboration and accountability within groups, to make sure on a daily basis that you were within like a pod of people that were all going the same direction, doing the same things, around with an accountability group where you really committed to, this is what I'm doing every day. And we do that every day. And we also wanted to make it so it was super inexpensive, because that was my other thing. Like at one point I was paying $3,000 a month for coaching, which by the way was great and awesome and all the things, but like that's a lot of money. And for
Yeah.
some people, that's too big of a commitment to make. And so we tried to take as much of that as we could. And listen, I am not at all saying that our program that is way, way cheaper than that is the same exact intense scrutiny, but it's really close and it's for a lot less money. So it's pretty awesome.
So I think that, that's an interesting strategy is you focus on the group element of things that you said.
Yep.
So talk me about what you think that it brings from a psychological perspective for people to
Yeah.
be involved in a group.
Well, so what happens is, and I think again, a lot of your audience will probably recognize this is when you're a real estate agent, you're kind of on an island. I mean, even if you're in an office with a big office, you're kind of competing with people even in your own office, certainly with people outside of your office. And there's not a lot of camaraderie. There's not a lot of collaboration. Sure, you might have a sales manager who's doing some training. You might have some people that are, you might even have a mentor, hopefully in your office. But what we found is that if you've got a group of people, and it doesn't have to be a big group, we try and keep our groups at kind of maxed out around 10, where you've got some real camaraderie in there, where people are really rooting for you, and every day you've told them, hey, this is what I'm going to do today, and at the end of the day, this is we have a thing called the Daily Navigator, where we're literally sending out a little form to everybody every day. This is what I'm going to do, and then at the end of the day, I did the thing, and everybody goes, yay, it's great. And there's or I struggled today, I didn't get it done, and then you get people chiming in for that. So there's something great about that group collaboration where you're not alone, you're not on an island, and then you're seeing other people succeed, and each person is pushing the other person in a positive way, not in a downtrodden way, and it really creates some real success for people.
Do you think that this would be a really good way for people that are considering coaching and wanting to get into it, but think that it is a steep financial curve to go to? Because I know several people that we have, and we do business with on a regular basis pay well in excess of $3,000 a month in order to have coaching.
Yeah.
So do you think this could be a really good way to see how it fits for them in that sense?
Absolutely. It not only is that the case, but it also could be exactly. It's a great way to find out if you can even be coached, if you like being coached. I mean, coaching isn't necessarily for everybody. And we do have individual coaching beyond that, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a great stepping stone into individual coaching.
Chris, so Chris was on the podcast here before when we were just introducing in, and he's in the sense of the marketing world, so to speak.
Yes.
What is that? Some of the things that you coach people through, like their marketing plan, or is it more so a skill set basis, or is it what to do?
Exactly. So we're less about marketing, although we do have a piece of that. That's kind of part of our component, but we're more about what to do. So who to call, when to call, what to say, how frequently do you call, who should get more priority to call and who doesn't. We're definitely a relationship creation and cultivation business. So we're definitely not hey, it doesn't matter who you know, just send out these things and then you'll get X amount of leads back and then you convert that. That's not really our thing. Even the marketing that we do is really more still relationship based. We touch on farms and things like that, but really it's more of creating and cultivating actual, relationships with people.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Now, let's say that we go across the board, and this is a vague question, so forgive me. I'm known for asking very vague questions that aren't very precise.
Give me some vagary.
There you go. Is that if there was some commonalities between everybody that is in your program at this point and that you're meeting on a regular basis, what would be the one common trait that most agents have that they need help with?
Oh, most common trait that they need help with? I mean, accountability, hands down. I mean, that to me, when I go across and I speak at other offices and I talk to agents, across the country, the accountability seems to be the big challenge. What happens with a lot of successful agents, certainly not all, but there's the thing that makes us great is also the things that makes us challenging, right? So what makes us great is this ability to be great conversationalists and communicate and people trust us quickly and all these things. But the way that brain works is also the same brain that's totally scattered and easily distracted. It has a hard time, staying on track and staying on task of what they're trying to do. And so what ends up being for a lot of these people is that they're not really being purposeful about how they exist, either in their business or even in their life. By the way, I should mention that half of what we do is all personal development stuff. So it's meditation, it's exercise, it's eating right, it's all that stuff we feel like is a big component to all of this as well.
It's funny, the word accountability has some really negative connotations
Oh,
against
I
it
know.
when it
Yeah.
comes to
Yeah.
the real estate space, especially. Like, it's
Sure.
funny. It's funny. Most of the time, whenever there's conflict within the real estate community, it comes down to somebody holding somebody else accountable.
Mm.
So, how does somebody identify that they are ready for some accountability? Because I'm sure that you have people within your program that, or people that you've met that, again, they think they are, but they're really not open for bad feedback or any feedback at all about the way that they're operating.
Yeah.
How do you know someone's ready for the program or ready for coaching or ready for accountability or not
Yeah.
ready for accountability? Again,
Well,
it's just
let's
it's
clarify a little
tough.
bit about what accountability is. I think I get your question. So accountability is not associated with you were bad or you did this wrong or anything. There's no blame or anything like that. The accountability is strictly your own accountability, being held accountable on the days that you want to be accountable, being held for the things that you want to be held accountable to. So it's a self-directed accountability. It's not like our one-on-one coaching might be a little bit different, where we may say to somebody, hey, we think you should make this many phone calls or this many contacts or whatever it is. This is actually the opposite of that. This is saying we're going here's the menu of things that you should consider doing. You get to decide what those things are. Our only role in that accountability is for you to be able to say to somebody, I'm intending to do this today. In the morning, when we have the most energy, we're the most excited about what we're planning to do, that's when we're most likely to be able to come up with our authentic design of what we want any particular day to look like. And so that's when we have people, create that accountability sheet. And it's during the day that we start losing our energy or our mood gets in the way or something happens or we get distracted or all these things that take us off track. But really, we're talking about them being held accountable to the things that they've decided. I don't know if that helps you answer your
Yeah.
question, but this is not about blame or anything like that. The only thing we do is if for some reason somebody doesn't live up to their particular day, we'll just ask them a question. What do you think was the difference? Did you take on too much? Or did you get distracted during the day? And how can we help you the next time when you're creating your daily navigator again to commit to less? Because this daily navigator isn't a to-do list; it's a must-do list. And so, and you're taking it that seriously when you decide what it is that you're going to accomplish that day.
So I guess that there's an element that you see with people that they fail a lot, obviously, by not executing what they ultimately want to do
Yeah,
that
right.
day or in the real estate industry, full stop.
Correct.
How do people take those failures and use them as opportunities for growth?
Well, I think, to me, my whole business, my whole life, actually, you can make the argument, is about taking my failures and turning them into opportunities of growth. There's a term that we like, which is called the working edge. That's the place where you'll know you're at your working edge when you're feeling discomfort, sadness, anger, resentment around a specific emotional area or an action that you regularly don't take. And busting through those working edges are often as a result of so much failure in a specific place that you go, okay, I cannot do this anymore. Not unlike an alcoholic who reached their bottom and they're like, all right, I'm really willing to do something different now. That's where I would say is as how failure can turn into opportunity. When we talked about a little bit, I mentioned 2008, 9, September of 2009, I had just bought a $1 million house a couple years before that. I had 3 little kids, 2 in diapers, and thinking, things were great. And then 2008 happens and all of a sudden we're in trouble. In September 2009, I couldn't even pay my mortgage. And it was a hard pill to swallow that I had not put my family in a position to succeed even when there was challenging times. But what happened as a result of that desperate nature and that, like, I remember like sitting on my couch, feeling like there was an elephant sitting on my chest, the pressure of all of this, like, what am I going to do here? But all of that pain led me to getting coached and really changing some things about how I did. And had that never happened, I wouldn't have the great success that I have today. So the failure leading to growth is, to me, the key of everything. So if you're in fact, if you're in the middle of a failure or breakdown right now, which a lot of people are because of the way the inventory is, don't worry. This could be the greatest thing that ever could happen to you.
It's funny. One of the things that sort of led me to having a conversation with you was based around some of the things that I read in your profile, Rick. And one of those things was that you lived in a tool shed for 11 months or something along those lines. Can you elaborate on that a little?
That's true. I did. Right. So again, another example of the failure leading to greatness. So by the time I was 20 years old, my best efforts at life, with, a good family and being taught right from wrong and given lots of love and all that, I had found myself addicted to drugs. I had a little baby that I was a father to that I didn't want to be a father to. I wasn't capable of being father to, and kind of decided to move into a tool shed temporarily, at where I worked, and basically just get loaded all the time, and that was going to be my life. I mean, that was my best effort. And while I was there, after about a month of living in there, I had this epiphany of what my life really had turned into. I went and got some help from some people. I stopped doing drugs and drinking. I actually did live in that tool shed for the next 10 months, clean and sober. And that was, 33 years ago. And that whole experience and those people and the people that I still interact with, those people, as a 12-step program to this day, that's the foundation of, again, kind of all the great things that have happened from my life. So, to me, hopefully the message is, if you fall on your face, and kind of like you said earlier, this is the great opportunity, right? This is when you get to that place, you're like, you cannot go any further and you feel like you're stuck and it's never going to get any better. It's exactly the spot where could be about to be great, but you do have to be willing to do some things and take some direction and do things that you're not used to and not do things you're not comfortable with. But the things that can come from that are unreal and unbelievable.
Well, I think that that's a level of adversity that obviously a lot of people probably haven't experienced to that degree.
Yeah,
but then they
haven't
haven't
had some.
Yeah, but they probably haven't had to dig themselves out of that big a hole at the same time,
Sure.
or climb themselves out of the way of that hole. I guess that the grit that takes and the adversity and the tenacity mentally that takes, did that come from any place, or or where did you find that in those moments?
It's an interesting question, because what I would say is, including that moment, I would say, if you said, Rick, describe yourself. Do you have tenacity? And I'd say, no. I'd say I was a quitter. I would say, basically, I don't have any real gumption. I'm not a pick myself up by my bootstraps kind of guy. So I would say where that came from for me was other people. It came from getting help and people picking me up, and this kind of collaboration that we talked about, that we tried to create in our coaching program, is we're all in this thing together. And so what does the all in this thing together look like? And who are you surrounding yourself with? What is this thing that we're all in together? And for me, it was people at that time that were, trying to stay out of drugs and alcohol one day at a time. But then that idea of having people I wanted to surround myself with people that were, going places, doing great things. And then, it's like, you don't get picked off if you're on the outskirts of the herd, right? So I wanted to stay in the herd of whoever was doing great things. And so I would say less about me and tenacity, and more about who was I hanging out with and getting my information from.
If anybody's listening to this at the moment, and I hope they are, but let's say that they're thinking about, well, hey, look, the average of the people that I'm hanging around at the moment is not the average that I want to be, because you are the average of the people that you hang around.
Exactly, that's right.
How would you tell them to change? How would you say go look for another group of people? Because let's face it, is that we deal in a world full of introverts really now, in the sense of that it doesn't belly to belly doesn't happen much anymore. In the sense of, we're sitting here, we're on a Zoom call doing a podcast because of obviously the convenience that is, and a lot of people have delved into that. So therefore, they're so comfortable in the environment that they've created and the people that they've surrounded themselves with. What is the trigger point? Because too often people only change when the discomfort of the reality actually becomes too painful, right? But that's often probably too late. How can someone wake themselves up and make that change?
Well, okay, so I think you got a couple different questions in there. The first thing is, I wish I could tell you how do you change things before things get painful enough before you're willing to change? Because for me, my experience has been I do. I have to get to that point where things are painful enough for me to do something different. And so I don't have a good answer to that. Hopefully there's some other guests that will give you that information, and
No,
I'll
that's
listen
fine.
to your podcast and I'll find out. But who you hang out with has everything to do with what your life is going to look like, to your point. And so I think the one thing I would suggest, this was kind of newer information for me that I realized was, it is okay to outgrow your friends. It is okay to outgrow your friend group. And it doesn't mean you have to make some big official announcement and say, yeah, I'm not hanging out with you anymore. But what you can do is really start seeking out, who are the people that I want to be like, who are the people that are doing the things and going to places that I want to go, and be purposeful about spending time with them and creating those relationships. And if you don't know how to create relationships, well, sign up for our coaching program, because that's what we're all about. But there's plenty of books. There's lots of ways to be purposeful about who you're hanging out with and creating those relationships, because that really, really will make the difference. The people that are closest to me are all bigger producers than me in one way or the other. And in a lot of ways, I'm kind of the low man on the totem pole. I try and put myself in that position, but I also purposely do this. There's people that are, and again, if not that there's a hierarchy to who's doing what, but I purposely make sure that I've got people in my life that are not even just students, but mentees, people that are just look up to me for one reason or another. Maybe they're new in the business. Maybe they're new in just being adults or whatever it is, that I try and make sure I'm playing a role and being a mentor for them as well. And I think all those factors are relevant.
Sometimes when you find the mentee, it's one of those things. One of the things that I focus on is that when we're training on real estate, you actually get better at real estate because ultimately you're training on it and you're actually reinforcing some of the principles.
100% get better. You're exactly right. And I can't tell you that how often I'm supposedly giving advice or sharing my experience with somebody, and I'm like, Rick, you are looking in the mirror right now. You are listening to what you're saying, because it's exactly what you need to hear as well. So it's very,
Absolutely.
very powerful to be a mentor. So I would encourage everybody listening, if you haven't done that, just go find somebody that you can help in your office. It does amazing, magical things.
To not overly change gears, but this is about shifting, I guess, some type of mental set, but also a physical set. Is
Sure.
that, from my information, that you were for 30 years, you were a bit overweight and you were smoking, but then all of a sudden you're doing the New York Marathon. Did you change your group of friends, or how did that shift change?
Well, I got a new girlfriend. That's really what
motivation.
That's
motivation.
what happened. Yeah. So it was kind of a combination of things, but I did stop smoking when I got a divorce, which was like 8 years ago. And but then what came with that was a lot of weight gain. I'd already kind of gained some weight, but then stopping smoking, all of a sudden I'm eating sugar all the time. And I really wasn't one of these guys who was like, oh, I'm going to be, I'm a health guy, whatever. And then I met this woman who's just been a real game changer for me. We've been together for like 4 years now. But when we first started dating, she said she was going to go for a run. And did I want to go? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, no, that's dumb. Like who would go for a run? But I went because she was cute, and we got done, and it was terrible. I hated it. I'm not a runner. I've never been a runner. And she goes, how was that? And I said, great. I lied. And so then she goes, awesome. We're doing a race in 4 days, a 5K. I'm like, a 5K? What is that? Like 100 miles? I don't even know what a 5K is. But it started this process for me of stepping out of my comfort zone. The competitive nature of me was stronger than my desire, I guess, to not run. And so I went from a 5K to a 10K and a 10K to a half marathon. And then ultimately was training for a marathon, which is just totally insane. I very quickly actually lost like 30 pounds. But the best thing that happened was my mental state just went off the chart. And I was just more calm and less anxiety. Like people ask me all the time, they're like, do you love running? I go, I don't know if I love running. Sometimes I'll be out there and I love running, but mostly I love what running does for me.
Uh-huh.
And so, I'm about to do the San Francisco Marathon here in a few weeks. That'll be my third marathon. I ran Chicago. I ran New York. All these things were amazing. But the journey on becoming a runner and having it just become part of my life. And now I'm like a fitness geek. I work out all the time. I I actually do care about all these things, and it's fun. It's fun to have changed that. But really, the biggest thing is what's happened for my mental state.
You mentioned meditation previously. This is something that I've toyed around with. It's
Yeah.
something that I've given a shot. I go in and out of the trend of doing it.
Yeah.
I get frustrated with it. I then see the value in it. Then I get frustrated with it again. What's your relationship with meditation?
I would say it's probably very similar to yours. I was encouraged to meditate. The first time I ever heard I was encouraged to meditate was somewhere around 1990, like maybe January or February 1990. You might go, how do you know that? It correlates with when I stopped drinking and using drugs. And so that's when I was first heard about it. The first time that I really did it was 2002. So what is that? 12 years. It took me 12 years to really kind of get in there. And even then, I almost tricked myself into this place where they were all meditating. Again, with the groups, I didn't even think about this, but I was in this room where everybody's meditating. And I'm like, well, I guess I have to meditate now. This is ridiculous. But what happened was I really got somewhere within that meditation. And so that was like a big deal to kind of have something happen where I actually kind of went somewhere emotionally, mentally, and then from there, it's just been a practice. I didn't get there. It's like, now I'm a great meditator. I got there enough where I was like willing to continue to practice. And what I would say is, so what is that? Then 11 or 12 years later, I'm still practicing, and I do it probably 5 days a week. It's on my daily navigator, which is that thing I told you about. To help people accountable. It's part of the things that I tell everybody, I'm going to do this today. And I don't do it necessarily every day, but I do it pretty regular. But I get the struggle. I get the monkey mind. One of the things was meditation is not about not having monkey mind, right? It's just about when the monkey mind comes in and you start drifting off, you just bring yourself back to your breathing. It doesn't have to be, it's not complicated. The idea that you were frustrated meditating it's ironic because there is nothing to be frustrated about. You're just sitting there, you're being quiet, you're just focusing in on your breathing. And of course, while you're doing that, you're going to drift off and you're going to start thinking about your things you have to do that day or what you're frustrated about or, the laundry that you haven't changed. And but you catch yourself and you go, okay, I'm going to go back to focusing in on my breathing. And if you do that enough, it really takes just takes your brain down to a whole different level where you can just relax a little bit. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, I think that my expectation, along with I think that many others' expectations, is looking for something profound when you do it, when it really isn't about that.
It's not about that.
Yeah,
that's right.
So there's a part of this obviously that we need to talk about, which is a bit of your real estate stuff, and Petaluma is an area that you're quite passionate about. Yeah. So talk to us about the Petaluma area, why you think it is one of the better areas in Northern California, and why you chose to do real estate there.
Okay, well, why I chose to do real estate here is the same reason I bet you 95% of the people chose to do real estate wherever they are is they just ended up there and they ended up doing real estate. I mean, in all my travels, I rarely do I come across somebody who goes, I went to college so that I could be a realtor or whatever, and I chose to do it in this area. So I would say, I ended up here, but the town Petaluma is 30 minutes about north of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's also 20 minutes from Sonoma. It's 30 minutes from Napa, and it's 30 minutes from Healdsburg. These are all great wine country areas just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, and it is truly spectacular. The weather here, the climate is amazing, but we're far enough out of kind of the big city where the community within Petaluma is very family driven. It's very comfortable. It's not keep up with the Joneses. We have San Francisco level culinary restaurant. I mean, I bet we have maybe 15 to 18 just high level 5-star restaurants downtown Petaluma, which is one of the classic old downtowns. So we have a lot of tourists come just to hang around in the downtown, and it's awesome. And we only have about 60,000 people, so it's not a huge town or anything like that. But it's really comfortable. And if you want your city life, boom, 30 minutes away, you're in San Francisco.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that, there's something to be said that you've probably had an influx of people that have moved out of San Francisco to that area.
Sure.
There's no question about that. You've seen people dissipate from the city. The question for you is that I guess that Do you think San Francisco is ever going to come back to its former glory? Because it feels like it's a little,
I know.
a little troublesome at the moment.
It does, and it reminds me, New York City in the 70s was horrible, and it's not anymore, And so now it's still having its challenges, and then post COVID, a lot of the big cities are having a hard time. I don't know the answer to the question, but my common sense tells me that everything is cyclical and that something will happen that will change that around to it being something different. Will it be what it was before? Probably not. Rarely are things what they were before. There's always some new iteration of whatever that is. But it's too beautiful of a town for it to just kind of go by the wayside. That said, you never know. And I really have no idea.
It's a spectacular city. It is unlike any other city that you go to. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Now, just a little bit more to round out the podcast and finish out. I like to always finish with people that are new to the podcast and new to the audience. A little bit of stuff, favorite books, favorite podcasts, where you do a lot of your learning from.
Okay.
So let's start with podcasts. Are you a podcast guy? Do you listen to podcasts?
I do. I love Armchair Expert. That's Dax. I love Huberman Lab. I love School of Greatness, which I think is Lewis Howes.
Okay.
And let's see. Those are the three that pop into my head that I'm kind of regular on.
And then books. Are you an avid reader?
Yeah, we do a lot of book reading. I mean, I have so many personal development books. I'm really a personal development guy from a book standpoint. The one that really got me going. So about 5 years ago, I really had a new shift. And the beginning of that was The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. Okay. It was in the 90s. Have you read that one before?
No, I have not. No.
Oh my gosh. That one was a game changer. Nice, simple premise, but it really, really changed how I react to life and how I look at things. And it opened the door for a bunch of other stuff. Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, another personal development book, but really great perspective on how I interact with people, how I treat others, how I treat myself. That is really where I try and spend a lot of time. But from a business standpoint, Who Not How last year was really good. Atomic Habits is a great book. I love The Go-Giver. That was one that was early on in my career that, I just love the premise of Bob Burg's, protagonist in that book. So yeah, lots of good books.
So final one that I'll ask, from a real estate perspective, where do you do a lot of your learning from a real estate perspective? Is there a particular coach outside of obviously yourself and your own principles that you've obviously come up with, but is there anyone else that you look towards for mentorship within real estate or coaches or anything along those lines?
I mean, for me, it's been coaching. I mentioned the coaches that I had. I had those coaches for, excuse me, I have something stuck in my throat here.
No problem.
The coaches have been the biggest change for me. And that still is the case. Although right now my coaching is more around being a coach and personal development stuff, but that's where I get most of my big changes. Occasionally I'll hear things on a podcast or whatever that will be certainly relevant and something I can add in. And I do like to read books, but there's just not that much, and specifically pertaining to real estate, that isn't also that I found like. And listen, if somebody will share with me a great real estate book, I would love to read it. But that I just kind of go, a little bit of not as exciting. So I haven't got much out of books.
Well, again, Rick, we appreciate you being a part of the Rethink Real Estate podcast, and thanks for sharing so intimately about what your life has been like.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.